Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 63. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you'd like more information about the podcast, previous guests, want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all on the website, desertladydiaries.com. And I invite you to engage with me on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter at Desert Lady Diary. Today's conversation with T. Hammidi of Joshua Tree is jam-packed. We talk desert, gender identity, dates, and mental illness. If you're in Joshua Tree this week, don't miss T's Haunted Art House on November 3rd. I'll give you more information about that at the end of the conversation. I'm here today with Tanya Hammidi. She's a performer, educator, arts organizer, and organic date purveyor currently living in Joshua Tree, California. In 2016, T opened Dapper Date Shop, a food justice project highlighting the nutritional values and history of organic dates in the local desert and its communities. T hosts Queer Salon Joshua Tree, a monthly art salon for LGBTQIAA+ folks in the Mojave Desert. She, or should I say they, T earned a PhD in critical dance studies from UC Riverside and an MS in community development from UC Davis. So we should have just dancing everywhere with you here. Their dissertation, Dress, Dance, Desire, Statecraft, and the Dressed Dancing Body, focused on masculinities and the roles of costume in contemporary queer drag performance. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Don.
And you may have noticed that I've used a couple of different pronouns as we go along, and we're going to actually talk about that a little bit, aren't we?
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, because I get a little klutzy around that kind of stuff, and I want to refer to people as they prefer to be referred to, but I don't know why I don't know how to do it. So we're going to learn why, I guess, right?
Yeah, we could. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk a little bit about it. But, as always, the first question is, what was your first experience with desert?
Well, desert. I would say back in 2009, it's my first experience understanding maybe what the Mojave Desert was. I came here for a performance art boot camp led by some fantastic endurance performance artists, live artists, Ron Athey and Julie Tolentino. And it was a week-long introduction to the heat and the long walks, miles and miles of dirt you can walk, and the inadequate shelter, as well as the beauty and the transformation of time and sound that the desert offers. So it was a week long in the boot camp to learn about endurance performance and make performance.
Wow, that's really something. That's really cool that they were doing that here. So when you came that time, did you have any, a lot of people come and they're like, oh, I was just taken over by this place and I had to be here?
2000, well, I mean, a lot of people talk like that about their experience of the desert. I came in a more quiet way. I was very wedded to performance. I also decided to rent here when I wrote my dissertation that you mentioned. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
So I moved here right around that time, and I rented a cinder block cabin that wasn't insulated during the winter.
Ay.
And then I decided that I was on the third chapter of my dissertation, which was focusing on incarceration and solitude. So I had what was happening inside my head happening in the physical environment, and I'd say go for it, because the only way out is through. So that was my introduction to the desert. Was a cold winter in a cinder block cabin writing.
Oh my gosh, I had a cinder block place in Florida.
Yeah,
not good.
A good idea.
Yeah. So at what point did you decide, did you just rent here and did your dissertation and thought, well, when I'm done, I'll just pack it up and go somewhere else? Or was it that spending that period of time here that made you say, you know what, I kind of like this place and I think I'm going to stay?
Yeah, it was a little bit of both, right? I think coming out here was to find a quiet space to write. No need to go to Los Angeles, where a lot of my peers went. I was certain that I wouldn't get writing done there. And after the project was finished, I just enjoyed the space and being here. So it was just a day after day thing, well, this place is all right. And I rented for a while. I was out on the north side. It was a lot of fun.
Cool. Mm-hmm. So I've just been reading Jenny Q's book, who's been interviewed on the podcast, Held Together. And I learned that you were a firefighter.
Oh. Did I wear my fire hat? No, I didn't.
No,
I was going
but
to.
I read it in the book. So
Right.
when was that? In between the dissertation? Before? After? How did that all happen?
I funded my way through graduate school. I got a master's degree in community development from UC Davis, and Davis is a wonderful place, great farmers markets, really hot summers, although there are creeks to swim in. So it's like Joshua Tree, but not, because it's not quite as brutal. And I also funded my master's or my graduate degree, my PhD, by doing firefighting in the summers.
Wow.
So I was a firefighter for 6 years. I did all sorts of different things. I was on a hand crew, and then I got onto a hotshot hand crew, which is apparently really cool and interesting and prestigious. You just hike really fast and get to the fire really early, but it's just a lot of really hard work, but it's fun because you're in a team environment.
So did you train for that while you were at UC Davis? Was that part of your community work?
You know, as things happen with me, sometimes it's often about clothing. I had gotten a really good pair of boots at the thrift store, and they happened to be Red Wings with these soles, you know, that were in the thrift store, which makes sense because it was in the community where there's fires north of us, and they happened to be the shoes that you wear for firefighting, and somehow... So I just stumbled into it because I really like my boots. And when I went to the introductory meeting, they just said you had to have a certain things, and since I already had them, I thought, well, let me try this out. But I do really like the forest. Yeah, I'm a forest and tree person.
So do you leave the desert sometimes and go visit the forest?
No, I mean, that would probably help.
Get some cooler temperatures or something like that.
But I did get to travel. I mean, I pursued a career, so I got to go to Montana as an assistant fire captain.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was great. And it happened to be in the same town where that movie Back to the Future was. One of the guys lived. Forgot who he is, but funny guy. He lived
Michael
there.
J. Fox?
No, the other one.
Oh, the crazy guy.
With the hair.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. I'm a horrible person. I'm a horrible actor.
Yeah. So that was prior to graduate school, and then I blew my knee out on a hike in Colorado when we were out on fire, and so at that point I had 9 months of paperwork to do and decided to apply to graduate school. So I made my way from fire into graduate school, and then when I got my degree, I stayed in the desert. So
yeah,
there you go.
Right. So that time that you rented to do the dissertation, that's where you just decided, I'm just staying here. So at that point, did you already meet people in the community, having been here and writing? Did you give yourself breaks to go out and kind of see what was going on? Or
I had friends here, so I mean, and I did teach, so there was a little bit of commuting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I did teach
at San Francisco. Did I read? Okay.
So right in the beginning, I was teaching at San Francisco Art Institute and UC Davis.
Okay.
And then more recently, I've been teaching at UC Riverside. So there was commuting at the beginning, but I had some friends that lived way out on the north side, some trans guys who kind of punk trans folks who were fun and they cooked good food, and it was sort of enough for me. I didn't seek community. I didn't come to find something new. I just came to kind of quiet things down.
Gotcha.
And I luckily knew a few people.
Yeah. No, that makes it a little easier. They can tell you like where to go grocery shopping or where to stay away from or try this place but don't go there and that sort of thing.
Yeah. But then of course I met Jenny Q and...
Well, exactly. I read that in the book, that you
Right.
walked into her shop and realized that this was a Middle Eastern person.
Yeah.
And had that whole conversation. So let's talk a little bit about that, because a lot of people don't know that. Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah, Jenny Q, I walked into Jenny Q's shop, and whenever there's Middle Eastern food, and I'm Lebanese American, so whenever there's Arab food in a place, you kind of want to check it out and make sure that the right person is selling the food.
Right.
And I kind of went in and looked her up and down, and I said, what is it? Why are you selling Arab Middle Eastern food? And, I didn't know her background. And then, of course, she turned that into a wonderful opportunity to affirm that she was Middle Eastern. She yelled out, she squeaked, in fact, that she was Palestinian. And then she kind of had a catharsis assuming I was a lesbian. I don't know what the giveaway was. But, she said, somehow I had said I was Lebanese. And she said, I've never met an Arab lesbian before ever. And she cried all at once. and snot came out of her nose and everything. And so that's how I met Jenny. She cried and then she laughed. And then we held hands and discussed those feelings. And there you go. And that was the beginning of a great friendship.
Did you find that there was I mean, you knew these trans guys, you said, that lived here, and then you met Jenny. So did you find when you moved here that you thought you found or did you feel like you found your people, shall we say? People use that in different contexts, whether it's actors, artists, musicians. And then I assume that there's a tighter community for you all.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
I don't know.
It does make sense, but it's sort of, it's hard to,
I mean, not a protective in a way, if that makes sense. Because we are in the middle of, I mean, I was very surprised after I moved here and worked the election polls that I saw many different people that I don't travel in the circles of at coming to vote. So that was like, wow, I'm really getting to see the full community here because we kind of stay in our insular circles, I guess.
Yeah, although to answer in a roundabout way, I mean, I would say, and kind of my interest in community development has always been to bridge ties between different classes. It's just because I was always interested in agriculture in Davis, which is a big ag town. So it's always been about worker, owner, people that buy the food, which is 3 different classes. So here, I hung out with the people at the thrift store that's not here anymore. What was her name? Anyway.
I don't know, but I'm sad it's gone.
Yeah. Carla, we miss you. And I didn't hang out with her at all. But, it was like the people that, anyway. So my first, they weren't friends. Were like Home Depot and Carla,
Right.
But having queer friends and queer and trans friends makes a huge difference. But it's also the combination of queer, trans, and art, or, I mean, Jenny Q is, an exception because she's just adorable, and so that's just a whole different world as well, because she was a deadhead, which is very different from my beat,
Right, and then when I interviewed her, she also talked about having come here with a climber, and that's another community that's here in Joshua Tree. Yeah.
But I find that people get together, but people also stay apart. I mean, so is there a queer community and do we all connect and that kind of thing? Not so much in that didactic way, although we do throw a salon.
Sure.
But I mean, I miss my drag kings and drag queens, and I miss certain things about that's because I'm a queer performer. So I do still long for, we say my people, I think, it's a more complicated word, I would say. So.
Yeah, probably.
But feel very at home amongst the artists here,
Okay, yeah. I want to read something from it's just a tiny couple of sentences from the book, where, since we are talking about community, and this community in particular that really, I wasn't here for this, but reading this book, you can just see it and you can feel it being here, that people just completely rallied around her when she was ill, and it's just beautiful to see
in
this day and age, I guess, Yeah. So you tell the story about her snort, honk, ha, 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 when you met her in her store. And you say, "We come to the desert for these kind of exchanges. We arrive here to slip away from the other mundane existences, hoping there is another way to live." And I just thought that just captures this place pretty succinctly.
Yeah.
Because I think everybody who is here really wants to be here and loves being here and loves the people that they're here with. So
yeah.
So talk about the Queer Salon and what that all involves. How often is it if somebody's listening and they want to participate?
Oh, yeah. Well, the Queer Salon is a monthly salon-style get-together that I've had for, I think it's over a year. I think it's my second year-ish, that grew out of when I had my date shop downtown at Sun Alley Shops. I wanted to have folks who were new to town or passing through, as well as people who live here full-time, have a place or a space to connect. So it was the idea of an open forum. Anybody can come. You don't really have to have a specific identity, but we do talk about gay stuff and we do flirt along those lines. So people, so that's the idea of trying to have community, but also have it open to all, So we had a cabaret. That was really fun. And a lot of different acts. We meet to eat. The idea of having lots of queer people or in a restaurant, it's just a way to, I mean, there is some of all that old, that kind of sort of activism where you want to feel like there's a lot of you, because it does get... I'm the kind of queer that needs other queers just to remember what else we think about, and to have a mirror.
Right. So it sounds like the salon would be a benefit to someone like me who is, I consider myself an ally to the LGBTQIAA plus community.
Do you know what that is?
No. Could you go through? I mean,
Sure.
the obvious ones are lesbian, gay, is bi, trans, queer, and then I'm lost.
Intersex for I.
Okay.
Intersex.
And can you explain what that means?
I mean, intersex means somebody born with genitals from what's considered both binary genders, male and female. So it's really about people that are born with certain anatomy, even if it was repressed and discovered later. So that's intersex. And so that's really like kind of a gender identity in the same way that trans and transgender and transsexual is versus the sexuality kind of identities of lesbian, gay, bisexual, which is orientation. So it's sort of a smorgasbord.
Pulling it all together. And then the AA plus?
Oh, yeah, the ally, the asexual.
Okay.
And then ally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I was reading one day on Facebook, and I'm not really sure who posted it, and I don't even really remember what the specifics of the article were. And then someone's comment was, oh, is that another one of these cisgender things? And I was like, what is that? I don't know what that is either. So I guess I'm curious as to how one would educate themselves. What are there resources that someone like me who is an ally but doesn't really understand the depths of all of this?
Sure. Yeah, I mean it's a great question, and there are a lot of resources that someone like you could find on the internet for sure. If you were to look at the center in Palm Springs, it's called the Center, LGBTQ Center. They have a lot of links, and it's sort of par for the course for organizations to put out kind of how-to pages, because everybody makes mistakes around vocabulary now that everybody is sort of talking about it in this new sort of public-ish forum. So it's not that it's easy, and the important thing is to try and to also to learn, really. Yeah, so there's a lot of internet resources, and you could just Google something to the effect of transgender and queer vocabulary, or what is cisgendered, and it would lead. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I ended up doing for that one.
Oh, good.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say, though, cisgendered, for those that don't know, right? So cis refers to individuals that are born with specific anatomy, like male genitalia, Adam's apples, so on, specific chromosomes, versus vaginas, breasts, and other chromosomes. I can explain that very well. But anyway, people born with certain anatomy who identify with the anatomy that they are given by the doctor at birth. So the idea is that it's a privilege, in a way, to identify with the body that you were born with. And marking cis, even though it seems awkward, is a way to mark that it's just another kind of gender in the same way that trans is. So it just kind of tries to level out the playing field. And it all seems awkward for some people. I mean, there's plenty of folks that are just like, who cares about all the labels and identities? Why don't we just all be together?
Be humans.
Be humans.
Yeah.
And although I think that's a great way to go, I mean, love and community is the most important thing, but we have to remember that each of those letters was fought for and are being fought for in parts of the world that we can't take for granted. Or in India, or in the deep Coachella, or around the corner from us here in 29,
Right.
So it's like, and it has a history. We have culture attached to those, to ways in which we've understood our own identities. And so it's not just an identity, it's a way of being and relating to, past, present, and future.
And we talked earlier about the pronoun usage.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? The there and they, and kind of neutralizing it, I guess, per se? Is that? Well,
no, I mean, so gender queer, I came in of age as a butch and a queer. I liked being a butch lesbian because I was working on my masculinity and felt more masculine and had a lot more fun in that way. And queer is the thing that rubs against the grain of normative. So queer is the way in which, you could say, well, I could be attracted to a drag queen and still consider myself a lesbian. That would be like queer desire, right? So it was sort of it's something that breaks apart two into three or more.
Okay.
Is to queer. But as transgender has become part of our civic and legal dialogue, genderqueer, or people that really identify across the continuum, and sometimes, have to say, are asked, what are you, or how do you like to be called? And you end up kind of having to reproduce normative gender, if you want to say, well, call me he or call me she, but if in fact you have a more fluid identity across the continuum, so they seems to be the word that has emerged as a way to account for all and none at the same time. And we're all, as I said, struggling with language and finding terms that make us feel the most ourselves. So I go along the continuum. I like a lot of he's, I like she's, and I'll go with they.
Right.
But I grew up in France, so I have also learned gendered language and personal and familiar and unfamiliar. So they doesn't really translate in the same way to other,
Right, other languages or...
Kind of. So
right.
it's just,
Well, and that's interesting because when I first moved here and saw you at the farmer's market, and then I was saying, oh yeah, that's the date lady, because I'd seen you somewhere else later in the day. Mm-hmm. So you do kind of have that moniker as well. So how does that feel?
Yeah.
Is this just something that happened naturally and you're like, that's good?
I really had to think about it quite a bit. I mean, I didn't think about it because it was given to me, so it was really, it was so great to become something, and how fun it is to be the date lady, or you could be the date guy. But I thought, well, I can't really fight that battle and have everybody, and I was sort of out to the market manager, but she doesn't really know what it is, so there you go. So I just stuck with the date lady.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't need to muddy the waters because this is really fun, and I want to just focus on the dates.
Right. So let's go there.
Okay, let's talk about dates.
Yeah, let's talk about dates.
All right.
How did you get interested in dates and then end up selling them at the farmer's market and having a store and...
Yeah, I mean, dates have been so fun. As I said before, I lived in Davis, and I actually have grandparents that were farmers on the East Coast. So farming's in the family, but the other side of my family is urban. So I'm a little bit country and a little bit of rock and roll, the song goes. So when I came, one of the things that helped me understand where I was in the desert is by thinking about agriculture. I was like, what grows here? I mean, besides a piece of twig and the bulb of a cactus and making twig tea, which just means that I wasn't educated. But I was like, I want to eat something. There's got to be something, right? And for some reason, we can't really see the date trees that grow. But,
I didn't know there were any here.
Yeah. The Coachella Valley feeds the nation. Not only the nation, but the world.
Wow.
And we've reseeded parts of the Middle East after parts were blown up with medjool seeds that they sent. I mean, so what happened? Anyway, I could go on about the history.
Well, do you think that your ethnicity has something to do with that too? Coming into this whole, and the agriculture, it kind of blends all together.
It all came together. So that's what I wasn't getting in Davis. So I got into the dates because I knew the market manager and was just walking by one day, and she said, hey, I know a date farmer who's looking to sell, and was interested in having somebody join them so we could sell them at the market. And so I got to know this farmer, and it was really important for me to believe in the farm and the farmer and see what they're doing with the soil and this and that. And I just started getting to know this farmer out in Thermal. And that kind of led to selling his dates at the farmer's market, and then started learning about dates, and I suddenly realized how many people eat dates. A lot of people eat dates.
I like them with cream cheese.
Yeah. I go for the walnuts or nuts, peanut butter. Actually.
Oh yeah,
Pretty
I never
yummy.
thought of putting peanut butter. That's a great idea.
Yummy.
So good.
A lot of people eat dates. A lot of people think they don't like dates, and then they eat one, and then they have a happy attack. So it was very exciting to talk to customers over. I did farmers market for 2 years, and I met so many people that told me their date stories. And then, and everybody laughs, and they make funny date jokes, and, and their kids are scared of dates, and they eat one, and they're like, oh my gosh.
Right.
And then
it's like a sugar cube.
one customer's young daughter, she's 5 or something, started saying date lady. And so then children were coming to see me. So it felt, it's very different than teaching feminism, as you can imagine.
Right.
Which is really a niche market in what I was doing in my teaching career. So it was a different turn on bridging community, and it was, a lot more fun. Of course, I was eating dates, so.
Yeah. And you also have local honey there, too?
Yeah, I had local honey for a while.
Oh, okay.
But it was too much glass to manage, so I just decided to stick, And I like dirt. I like getting into the dirt. I like going to the farms. I like learning about the trees. I planted 2 date trees this year, right here in Joshua Tree,
Cool.
And there's a lot of dates in 29, less in Joshua Tree because it's a real question about getting through the winter. the tree gets cold. So that's why they grow on the other side.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really neat.
Yeah. And the Dapper Date, so it was called Dapper Date Shop because it was this idea, because I wanted to bring my queerness in somehow, because I just, prior to that, been organizing queer fashion shows.
Mm-hmm.
So Dapper was affiliated with that fashion work.
Right. So you're, I don't know, it's not a company, but it's Queerture.
Oh, Queerture.
Right.
Yeah, it's a blog.
Okay.
And then I would just put on events. So I was a producer of events, and it was just called Queerture or Queerture.
But it was like fashion for queer.
Fashion for queer folks. I mean, there's a magazine called Dapper Q, and in New York that she has queer fashion on opening night of the New York runway shows. But for me, my interest was in seeing LGBTQIA models modeling the clothes rather than queer designers making clothes and then they go to straight folks, and there's something lost in translation. I mean, I studied dance, so it's really about how you wear the clothes and not what you're wearing, right? So you're signaling, So Dapper Dates was sort of a way of saying it's important to notice the details of your body, of your nutrition, because dates are packed with so much, but you can just overlook it because it looks like a slug.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I don't think I didn't. I've only been eating them like the last 10 years. I didn't know. It was kind of like avocado. You know, I grew up on the East Coast. We didn't.
You didn't have avocados?
I think we may have had them, but I don't think my family knew what they were or what to do with them. So we never had them I never saw an avocado probably until, I don't know, I lived in Florida. And I started eating them there. I was introduced to them and started eating them there. So I had never, so the date thing was like, I didn't know anything about the dates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So regional almost to an extent.
Yeah, it is. And it did help me get closer to my culture as well. But it's interesting learning the date stuff from the farmer here, because he's also Christian and he's telling me Arabic words. And he's not, and so it's been an interesting kind of just thinking about the ways that you learn who you are, I mean, because my father's passed away, and here's a state farmer teaching me Arabic words, and I'll take it.
Yeah.
So it's been that, all of that helped me feel and understand what it means to be, in this area for me, right? Because it's not just Joshua Tree.
No.
We're in this huge region, and people do thrive here, and so it's nice to find other, and something so very different as well.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't think people would imagine that they would be finding that in the desert, but
it's the first, cultivated fruit in the world.
Well, and what's interesting about this area too is all of the homesteaders that came out here. It was an agricultural act that brought them, the government trying to see if people could farm this land, which is like, really?
Yeah.
Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah.
But that's how a lot of people ended up out here, building their homesteads, thinking, we're going to make a life for ourselves out here.
Yeah.
So, but some of us have and found different ways to do it. That's all.
Yeah. And the question of water is sort of
always
dates like water. So, I mean, there's questions.
I wanted to tell you that there was about a year ago, maybe before, no, I'm not sure how long ago it was, but there was a session at the community center in Yucca Valley, and they were talking about healthcare. And you got up and told a very moving story about your brother's situation. Is that better? Is he still with you? And I mean, I guess to the extent of the fact that even if people have mental illness and they do have family that can be there for them, it's still extremely challenging.
Yeah. And when they decided to start building this hospital over here, this behavioral health clinic, I thought, oh my gosh, it was meant to be. I can live here, my brother can live in the hospital. Wouldn't that be hilarious? But it's a short-term unit anyway.
Right.
But yeah, it's a difficult, I'm my brother's caregiver from afar. He lives right now in Northern California under care. But no, he's not getting any better. And the care doesn't get any better, so ultimately everything just gets worse. It's a tough situation. It's probably, often I say it's why I relate to the desert, because it's so hard to survive sometimes. And I just feel it's a very difficult situation caring for someone with schizophrenia. And because there's no infrastructure, it's kind of like you're kind of on your own.
Right.
But the hospitals do their best, but they are lacking as well. So, but it's no joke.
No, and we probably need some real serious policies and legislation to happen to help that situation, because it only exacerbates other things in people's lives.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw it downtown with the folks in Skid Row and even just people in downtown. So you combine high housing prices, which puts you under stress, which could trigger, I can't buy my meds, which could trigger, I don't even know who I am or where I am, and the next thing you know, you're on the street. It's really hard. And even when you have somebody like yourself who is an advocate for your brother, it's still not easy.
Yeah, well, they over-medicate, they don't... I know that everybody says that, but I've watched it with my own eyes within, the last 3 months of my life. And I've been in the game with this situation for 15 years as an adultish person. Mm-hmm. So it's like nobody's come up with a solution, but there's a whole town in Belgium, I think, that's... Everybody's sort of kooky. You'd think Joshua Tree would be it, but it's too late because...
Well, I was actually...
But it's...
You mentioned the facility that they just built, which is, 10 or 16 beds, interim care, so now the sheriffs don't have to go take somebody down the hill or to Loma Linda or wherever the next place is, which is great. But I was very surprised at the number of people in our community that were kind of against it.
Yeah.
And I thought, if any place, this place where we live that has a great community and has so many empathetic and compassionate people, I was really surprised to see the number of dissenting opinions.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately it threatens people's idea of their property value. I mean, I think it's the idea of, how could it be almost anything less? Or maybe the feeling of the kinds of boundary crossings that might happen of people wandering But you imagine, people that lived in the desert before that actually did, there must be models, but it takes a lot of tolerance to live in the kind of disarray of mental illness can bring on. So it's not like it's easy.
No.
But, it's not going away.
No.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, trying to find solutions is hard.
But, more dates, because they do help the central nervous system.
Oh.
And
I have some in the fridge.
Okay.
Are they good in the fridge, or you should not keep them in the fridge?
Yeah, definitely. Well, your barhies should go in the freezer if you have barhies. I mean, they can go in the fridge or the freezer because they'll taste better. But the fridge is fine. But medules, depending, they start to get a little whitish. This means they're getting sugary. Okay. And so take them out.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some of them I bite into and I'm like, my cheeks are sucked in. It's so sweet.
Yeah.
But they're good.
Yeah.
If you do have that craving for something sweet, like typically after I eat a meal, I want something.
Totally.
And I guess it's better than a cupcake.
Yeah, it is.
So if someone came to you and said, Tanya, I am thinking about moving to the desert, what are some things that you might tell them?
Well, I would say, come on. It's going to change your life, and it'll change your life in ways that you don't anticipate. You'll have a lot of fun, and you might yell and scream. There's some great places to go. I haven't been to Landers Brew yet, but I want to catch some music out there.
Yeah, it's great.
I really enjoy the macchiatos at Frontiers, as well as all the food made by an excellent cooking team in the back kitchen. Very yummy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of great people here trying to make community work. And so I would just say, come down and start reading the billboards and be nice to everybody.
It's a small town.
It's a small town, and the point is, that we all got here, but there are people here before us, and so what we learned by being here is to slow down and just look around. And also I'd suggest that they have a really big double insulated water container as their first purchase.
I appreciate you coming on and talking about this load of subjects that we covered today.
Yeah, I really love what you do.
Really short period of time, so thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
As promised, here's more information on T's Haunted Art House. The event is November 3rd from 5 to 10 p.m. at 6430 Center Street in Joshua Tree. There'll be art and music, pumpkin soup, and vampire's blood. Admission is a donation of $5 to $10 and no flashing lights and nothing too scary for the kids. Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion on the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. Next week, I'll be playing interviews that I gathered in September and October when I took the podcast on the road to the Covington Fall Festival and Landers Bizarre Bazaar. I did some on-location mini interviews asking the same 5 questions, so next week's episode is going to be some of those interviews. It'll be a little bit different, but I think you're going to enjoy it. And Allison, thanks for signing up for the weekly email that brings the new episode to your inbox each week. Never miss an episode of the podcast. You can sign up just like Allison did at desertladydiaries.com and click the weekly newsletter button. Thanks so much for listening.